When it was brought to my attention a little while ago that a 2-hour Brianna Wu hate vid had dropped, I was looking forward to watching it. But when I sat down to listen, sure, there were some entertaining nuggets, but midway through, the entire piece's teeth were ripped out with a pair of pliers by the sudden revelation that the author, Dead Domain, is either a severe liar or completely brain dead. During the section covering Brianna Wu and Gamergate, Dead Domain goes out of their way to paint Brianna as unique and very, very different to Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn, suggesting that, unlike these two, Wu was an attention seeker. Let's take a listen.
Now, this is anecdotal, but I spent hours Googling, gathering, and searching for interviews done by Anita, Brianna, and Zoe during this time.
Dead Domain claims to have spent hours trying to dig up coverage. Hours. I have spent no more than 10 minutes looking for stuff for this video.
When it was active in 2014 and the year or so following, with rare exceptions like an appearance on a talk show from Anita.
What the hell you mean on a talk show?
Here now to be talked to is media critic and creator of the web series Feminist Frequency, Anita Sarkeesian. Ms. Sarkeesian, thanks so much for being on.
You tell me Zoomers don't know the Colbert Report. I'm sure they really had to twist Anita's arm to get her to appear as a guest and have all their shit promoted there.
Almost all of Quinn and Sarkeesian's interviews came years after the harassment campaigns that were threatening them and their families' lives.
1, based on what I have in front of me right now, I'm not sure that's true. But 2, think for a second. These two people did more interviews over the course of 9 years than they did over the course of 2.
Brianna wasn't like that.
True, I'll give you that one, but these other 2 women weren't like that either, which we'll get to.
For as much hate as they received and were targeted for, they very obviously wanted to try and continue living their lives, and were hesitant to be cast as some kind of ideological leaders on the front lines of Gamergate, despite not being given much of a choice.
I take it you didn't find the Rolling Stone interview titled Anita Sarkeesian on Gamergate. We have a problem, and we are going to fix this. Published on October 17th, 2014. And if Dead Domain was searching for hours, I don't really understand how they could possibly miss Zoe Quinn, Gamergate Must Be Condemned. Published by the BBC on the 29th of October, 2014. That piece was accompanied by a separate video interview that was published the next day, in which, far from being hesitant to be cast as an ideological leader on the front lines of Gamergate, as Dead Domain put it, Zoe Quinn tearfully provides her heroic motivation to never back down.
I have a folder on my desktop called Those Who Left, and every time somebody sends me a message saying like, hey, I really admire your strength, but it's not worth it for me, I'm leaving.
How big's the folder?
It's disturbingly big. That's one of the reasons I can't back down.
Dead Domain's characterization of these people is total bollocks, and they're either lying or have no idea how to search for things.
Compare, for example, Anita being quoted as saying it's frustrating to be known as a survivor of Gamergate, and then Brianna continuing to wear it as a badge of honor, to this day proudly touting her facing down the internet hordes as an achievement.
A former game developer, and I think most people know me from Gamergate.
Alright, I'll compare them. They're quite similar. The headline Dead Domain pulled up is from 2017, and the article itself notes that Anita was still yapping. Feminist Frequency tweeted in June of this year, Gamergate still exists, still harasses marginalized voices, and still affects our daily lives. The abuse has never stopped. The headline quote isn't her putting it behind her, it's just another layer of victimization. And in seconds, I found that 5 years after that, Anita was trying to use juicy Gamergate gossip to promote her show on Nebula.
You want to know what really happened with Gamergate? That time when we'll take you through the context, the players, and the controversy.
The fantasy-based attack on Wu as being terrible when these women are great actually minimizes the real cringe, the true embarrassment. Far from being different, Wu is actually, very obviously deliberately, exactly the same. Let's jump back a bit in Dead Domain's video to where they talk about a strategy Wu employed.
In fact, she spent a lot of time and effort trying to goad people into engaging with her online. I don't want to make it sound like she didn't get any harassment, by the way, but there is overwhelming evidence that Brianna continually went out of her way to poke and prod the Gamergate forums, which you can see in these tweets from October 10th, 2014. You can see from these tweets she starts the mocking around 10:30 a.m., and by 4:30 p.m., she announces the same day that 8chan has doxed her, and proceeds to talk about fleeing her home with her husband for fear of violence.
Hey, that story sounds really familiar. A little over a month earlier, Anita posted a screen cap of a nasty email she'd received and said she wasn't afraid of strawman quote-unquote rebuttals. 4 hours later, she says, "Some very scary threats have just been made against me and my family. Contacting authorities now." Followed by, "I'm safe. Authorities have been notified. Staying with friends tonight. I'm not giving up, but this harassment of women in tech must stop." Now let's check out those threats that forced Wu to leave home.
Particularly pointing to threats not from 8chan, but from a Twitter account, Chatter White Man.
Looks like Brianna learned from the master. If we hop back to August 27th, we can see that Anita also posted the threats made against her, and it was also a spammed string of nasty tweets.
3 days later, Brianna had an interview on the front page of Cosmopolitan. Soon enough, the list of her interviews would encompass the Boston Globe, Verge, Polygon, Huffington Post, VentureBeat, Daily Mail, BuzzFeed, Six Axis, and like a dozen others, all focused on the narrative that this Gamergate harassment campaign had driven a game developer from her home.
It took 3 days for coverage to start. Nice try, Wu, but it only took them 2 to start covering Anita. The Guardian's coverage of Anita even noted how much coverage there was of Anita. Even one of the example articles Dead Domain just used to show Wu getting attention features Anita's story. The title's "Another Woman Flees." Who do you think one of the other ones is? Ah, but harmful. Anita wasn't interviewed for those articles, and Dead Domain said interview. Sure, but do we know that she was even asked for comment or invited? Later, in October, when a speaking engagement at a school was threatened, and she chose to dip out, she was on it when the Colbert Report invited her. She did an interview covering online hate with Game Informer, did another interview about it with Democracy Now! She went on MSNBC talking about this stuff. She was on NPR, PBS, CBS, front page of the New York Times. I think that beats Cosmo. Hashtag stop Gamergate, by the way. On the 28th, the New York Times gave her an op-ed spot too. She even made time to talk to local news. And if we jump back again to the Twitter thread she left her house over, she was talking about that at a festival, which by the way is one of only 2 media appearances she lists on her website.
I'm not saying Brianna was never harassed or sent death threats, but the speed with which she not only entered the conversation, but went from nobody knowing her name to apparently needing to flee her house for fear of her life, all the while she continued speaking up, is so wildly at odds with what you see from Zoe and Anita. That's just a fact.
Dead Domain, are you okay? What the hell were you searching all those hours? Saying Brianna continued speaking up through this and that's wildly different to Anita and Zoe is insane. Ludicrous. Anita was literally retweeting Brianna Wu and saying +1, i.e. me too. She was posting hate mail. Her feed on Twitter from that time period is her sharing Gamergate coverage, throwing insults into the Gamergate tag. She made sure the hashtag was on her post about death threats. The only real difference is that Wu's a pale imitation of this shamelessness. And worse, Wu's actually a copy of a copy. It's hard to say who's copying who with Zoe and Anita, but Wu was most definitely copying both of them after having seen the attention they could get. And in October, they realized there was more to gain if they banded together, with all of them gaining news media interviews that month. And talking about each other, here's Zoe on MSNBC.
What's your message to those men?
I really wish they would just grow up. I'm not going anywhere. Neither is Brianna, neither are any of the other women that have been targeted.
While Wu might literally say the word Gamergate more and make more references nowadays especially, the other 2 definitely rode it for more attention, jumping at any opportunity to get their name out there, including appearing at UN Women, think UN's version of TEDx, to help promote a cyber violence against women and girls report, which suggested that video games are turning kids into, quote, killing zombies. Whoopsie doodle. Point being, ultimately, that if in a video attacking Brianna Wu for these characteristics, you go out of your way to defend these 2, whole piece instantly becomes fake and gay. I think Dead Domain has 1 or 2 real problems with Brianna, one of them definitely being support for Israel, which is fair enough, especially the way Wu does it, and everything else, Dead Domain's heart isn't in it. Would not attack other people for the same. Is either pretending not to know things, or is just a sub-functioning human being who couldn't find this stuff, which is effortless to uncover. And either way, 2 hours of my life were wasted watching this video. Fuck you.